The medical bay of the Korvani research station Meridian Falls hummed with anticipation as Dr. Elena Voss carefully monitored the revival chamber's readouts. After 3 days of delicate preparation, they were finally ready to wake the human they had discovered drifting in the void. The cylindrical preservation unit glowed with a soft blue light, its transparent surface revealing the figure inside. A man in his early 30s wearing what appeared to be a medical uniform from Earth's final era. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Commander Sarah Chen stood beside the observation window, her dark eyes reflecting the chamber's ethereal glow. The discovery had been unprecedented. No human had been seen alive in the galaxy for over 2 centuries, yet here was living proof that at least one had survived the species' catastrophic downfall. The implications were staggering, and the responsibility weighed heavily on her shoulders. The sequence of events that led to this moment had begun 6 weeks earlier, when the Deep Space Monitoring Array detected an anomalous energy signature drifting through the Kepler Nebula. The object was small, roughly the size of a shuttle, and appeared to be derelict. Captain Marcus Rodriguez of the exploration vessel Starlight Pioneer had been conducting routine surveys of the nebula's outer edge when the readings caught his attention. Rodriguez was a veteran explorer with 23 years of experience mapping uncharted regions of space. He had seen countless debris fields, abandoned stations, and mysterious artifacts, but something about this particular reading felt different. The energy signature was faint but consistent, suggesting some form of active power source rather than mere wreckage. The Starlight Pioneer altered course to investigate, and what they found defied all expectations. Floating serenely among the nebula's swirling gases was a sleek vessel of unmistakably human design. The ship was smaller than most human craft from the historical records, perhaps a medical transport or research vessel, but its hull bore the distinctive angular lines and alloy composition that marked it as a product of Earth's advanced shipbuilding techniques. Rodriguez's first officer, Lieutenant Maya Patel, ran every scan their sensors could manage. The vessel showed signs of age, but no significant damage. More intriguingly, it was still producing a low-level energy output from what appeared to be an internal power source. Most remarkable of all, there were faint life signs emanating from deep within the ship's central compartment. The decision to board the vessel required careful consideration. The Korvani had strict protocols regarding contact with potentially dangerous alien technology, and human artifacts were considered especially sensitive given the mysterious circumstances of humanity's disappearance. However, the possibility of finding a living human survivor was too significant to ignore. Rodriguez assembled a small boarding team consisting of himself, Lieutenant Patel, and 2 security specialists. They wore full environmental suits and carried scanning equipment capable of detecting everything from biological hazards to hidden weapons systems. The airlock seal between their ship and the human vessel engaged with surprising ease, suggesting that whoever built the craft had designed it for emergency boarding situations. The interior of the human ship was pristine. Emergency lighting provided a dim red glow throughout the corridors, and the artificial gravity was still functional, though set to a lighter level than standard Korvani preferences. The walls were lined with smooth metal panels covered in human writing, most of which Rodriguez's translation software could interpret as basic operational instructions and safety warnings. They made their way through narrow corridors that spoke of efficient design rather than comfort. The humans who built this ship had prioritized functionality over aesthetics, creating spaces that were cramped by Korvani standards but perfectly suited to human physiology. Every surface seemed to serve multiple purposes, with storage compartments, access panels, and control interfaces built into what might otherwise have been decorative elements. The life signs led them to the ship's central chamber, which proved to be a sophisticated medical facility. The room was larger than the corridors suggested it would be, with gleaming equipment lining the walls and a central area dominated by a single cryogenic preservation unit. The technology was clearly advanced, incorporating principles that the Korvani recognized but executed with techniques they had never seen before. Lieutenant Patel approached the preservation unit with her scanner active, taking readings on everything from the chamber's power consumption to the biological status of its occupant. The human inside appeared to be in perfect condition, suspended in some form of metabolic stasis that had preserved him for what their equipment suggested was well over 2 centuries. The man's appearance was striking in its ordinariness. He had short brown hair, regular features that suggested European ancestry, and what appeared to be a lean but muscular build. His clothing was unmistakably a medical uniform, complete with rank insignia that Rodriguez's database identified as belonging to a field medic in the Earth Medical Corps. A name tag on his chest read, Dr. Thomas Walsh, Chief Medical Officer. Rodriguez made the decision to transport the entire preservation unit back to their ship rather than attempt to revive the human in the unfamiliar environment of the derelict vessel. The process took several hours of careful engineering, as they needed to maintain power to the unit while disconnecting it from the ship's primary systems. Lieutenant Patel worked alongside the Starlight Pioneer's engineering team to create a portable power supply that could sustain the preservation chamber during transport. Once they had successfully transferred Dr. Walsh to their ship, Rodriguez faced another difficult decision. Attempting to revive a human after centuries of cryogenic sleep was far beyond the capabilities of his ship's medical facilities. The risks were enormous, and a mistake could easily result in the death of possibly the last living member of humanity. The responsible course of action was to transport the preservation unit to a proper medical facility with experts who could handle such a delicate procedure. The closest facility with the necessary capabilities was the Korvani research station Meridian Falls, located 3 weeks away at maximum warp. The station was home to some of the galaxy's most advanced medical research programs and had extensive experience working with alien physiology. If anyone could safely revive a human after 2 centuries of cryogenic sleep, it would be the specialists at Meridian Falls. The journey to the research station gave Rodriguez time to research everything the Korvani databases contained about human medicine and cryogenic technology. What he discovered was both fascinating and troubling. Humans had been remarkably advanced in medical science, particularly in the areas of trauma treatment and biological preservation. Their techniques for maintaining life in extreme conditions were far ahead of most other species, suggesting a civilization that had been forced to develop such methods out of necessity. The historical records painted a picture of humanity's final years that was both tragic and mysterious. The species had reached remarkable technological heights, establishing colonies throughout their local stellar region and developing advanced weapons, medical technology, and space travel capabilities. However, their civilization had been marked by almost constant conflict, both internal and external. The final decades of human civilization were poorly documented, but the available evidence suggested a series of catastrophic wars that had devastated their colonies and ultimately led to the abandonment of Earth itself. Some records hinted at the use of biological weapons, others suggested environmental collapse, and a few classified documents mentioned something called Project Phoenix that appeared to involve the preservation of human personnel for some unspecified future purpose. Dr. Walsh's preservation chamber was clearly a product of this final era, incorporating technology that represented the pinnacle of human achievement in life support systems. The fact that he had survived over 2 centuries in perfect condition was a testament to both the sophistication of the equipment and the skill of whoever had prepared him for the long sleep. When the Starlight Pioneer finally docked at Meridian Falls, the discovery of a living human caused an immediate sensation throughout the research community. Dr. Elena Voss, the station's chief medical officer, assembled a team of specialists from multiple disciplines to handle the revival process. The team included experts in alien physiology, cryogenic medicine, neurological trauma, and psychological rehabilitation. Dr. Voss was a Korvani with over 30 years of experience in xenobiology and emergency medicine. She was tall and elegant by her species standards, with the pale blue skin and large dark eyes that characterized her people. Her reputation for careful, methodical work had made her the obvious choice to lead the revival effort, and she approached the challenge with both excitement and extreme caution. The preparation process required 2 weeks of intensive research and equipment modification. The Korvani had to adapt their medical systems to accommodate human physiology, calibrating everything from atmospheric composition to temperature regulation. They studied every available record of human biology, cross-referencing with data from the preservation chamber's built-in monitoring systems to understand exactly what they were dealing with. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The preservation chamber itself was a marvel of engineering that impressed even the Korvani specialists. It maintained not only the basic life functions but also provided detailed monitoring of neurological activity, muscular conditioning, and cellular integrity. The data logs revealed that Dr. Walsh had been in perfect health when he entered the chamber, and his condition had remained stable throughout the entire preservation period. As the revival date approached, word of the discovery spread throughout the Korvani government and scientific community. Commander Chen arrived from the capital to oversee the process personally, bringing with her a team of cultural specialists and diplomatic advisors. The successful revival of a human would have profound implications for galactic politics, potentially rewriting the historical understanding of humanity's fate and opening possibilities for future archaeological discoveries. The revival process itself was scheduled to take place in Meridian Falls' most advanced medical facility, a state-of-the-art surgical suite equipped with every piece of technology the station could offer. Dr. Voss and her team had run countless simulations and prepared for every contingency they could imagine. Emergency medical equipment stood ready, and specialists in multiple fields were on standby to handle any complications that might arise. The chamber's built-in revival system was surprisingly sophisticated, with automated protocols that could handle most of the delicate work of bringing Dr. Walsh back to consciousness. The Korvani team's role was primarily to monitor the process and intervene if anything went wrong. Dr. Voss positioned herself at the primary control station, her fingers dancing over holographic displays as she prepared to begin the most important medical procedure of her career. The first phase involved gradually warming Dr. Walsh's body while maintaining careful control over his blood chemistry and neurological activity. The preservation chamber systems worked in perfect harmony with the Korvani medical equipment, creating a seamless transition from suspended animation to active life support. Monitors throughout the room displayed his vital signs as they slowly climbed from the barely detectable levels of cryogenic sleep toward normal human parameters. Commander Chen watched from the observation deck, her expression carefully neutral despite the historic significance of the moment. She had read all the available reports about human culture and psychology, preparing herself for first contact with a member of the galaxy's most notorious lost civilization. The humans had been known for their intelligence, creativity, and unfortunately their tendency toward aggressive behavior. How Dr. Walsh would react to finding himself among aliens in an unknown location was impossible to predict. As the warming process continued, Dr. Walsh's brain activity began to increase dramatically. The monitors showed complex neural patterns that suggested he was beginning to dream or experience some form of consciousness, even before full revival. Dr. Voss noted with satisfaction that his cognitive functions appeared to be completely intact, with no signs of the brain damage that sometimes resulted from extended cryogenic preservation. The second phase involved restoring full respiratory and circulatory function while gradually adjusting the atmospheric composition within the chamber. The preservation system had maintained Dr. Walsh in a low-oxygen environment that was optimal for long-term storage, but he would need normal atmospheric conditions once he regained consciousness. The transition required precise timing to avoid shock to his system while ensuring adequate oxygen flow to his brain and organs. Dr. Voss found herself impressed by the elegance of the human preservation technology. Every system was designed with multiple redundancies and fail-safes, suggesting that whoever had built it understood the critical importance of keeping the occupant alive under any circumstances. The attention to detail was remarkable, from the microscopic level of cellular preservation up to the macro systems that maintained the chamber's overall environment. As the revival process entered its final phase, drive, Walsh's eyes began to flutter beneath his closed lids. His breathing deepened and became more regular, and his heart rate climbed steadily toward normal human parameters. The monitors showed brain wave patterns consistent with someone emerging from deep sleep, and his muscle tone began to return as the preservation chemicals were gradually flushed from his system. The moment of first consciousness was both anticlimactic and profound. Dr. Walsh's eyes opened slowly, blinking in the soft light of the medical bay. He looked around with obvious confusion, his gaze taking in the unfamiliar surroundings and the alien faces looking down at him. When he tried to speak, only a weak whisper emerged from his throat, which Dr. Voss had expected given that his vocal cords hadn't been used in over 2 centuries. "Easy," Dr. Voss said in carefully practiced English, her voice gentle and reassuring. "You're safe. We're here to help you." She had spent weeks learning basic human language phrases, though she knew the translation devices would handle most of the communication once Dr. Walsh was fully alert. Dr. Walsh's eyes focused on her face, taking in her blue skin and large dark eyes with obvious surprise but no apparent fear. His expression suggested someone who was trained to handle unexpected situations, remaining calm despite the clearly alien environment he found himself in. When he tried to speak again, his voice was stronger, though still hoarse from disuse. "Where am I?" he managed to ask, his words coming slowly as he worked to remember how to form them properly. "You're aboard a medical station," Dr. Voss replied, activating her translation device to ensure clear communication. "My name is Dr. Elena Voss. You were found in a preservation chamber aboard a derelict vessel. We've brought you here to recover." Dr. Walsh's eyes moved around the room, taking in the advanced medical equipment and the various Korvani staff members who were monitoring his condition. His training as a medical officer was clearly evident in the way he assessed his situation, noting the IV lines connected to his arm and the monitoring devices attached to his body. Despite the obvious strangeness of his circumstances, he remained remarkably composed. "How long was I asleep?" he asked, though his expression suggested he already suspected the answer would be disturbing. Dr. Voss exchanged a glance with Commander Chen before responding. "According to our analysis, you were in cryogenic preservation for approximately 237 years. I know this must be difficult to process." The news hit Dr. Walsh like a physical blow. His face went pale, and for a moment his breathing became rapid and shallow as the implications sank in. Everyone he had ever known was gone. His entire civilization had passed into history, and he was now alone among alien strangers in a galaxy that had moved on without humanity. The psychological impact of such a revelation would have destroyed many people, but Dr. Walsh's medical training seemed to help him maintain his emotional equilibrium. "My ship," he said after a long pause. "Was anyone else found?" "You were the only occupant," Dr. Voss replied gently. The vessel appeared to be configured specifically for single-person preservation. "We found no evidence of other crew members or passengers." Dr. Walsh closed his eyes for a moment, processing this information. When he opened them again, there was a profound sadness there, but also a determination that suggested he was already beginning to adapt to his new reality. His next question revealed the kind of mind they were dealing with. "What happened to humanity? Are there others?" Commander Chen stepped forward, deciding it was time for her to take part in the conversation. "I'm Commander Sarah Chen of the Korvani Research Service. According to our historical records, human civilization experienced a series of catastrophic conflicts approximately 2 centuries ago. No human colonies or settlements have been detected since that time. You may be the last of your species." The weight of this revelation was enormous, but Dr. Walsh absorbed it with the same calm professionalism he had shown throughout the conversation. He asked detailed questions about the timeline of humanity's disappearance, the current state of galactic civilization, and the circumstances of his own discovery. His questions revealed a sharp intelligence and a thorough understanding of the broader implications of a situation. Over the following days, as Dr. Walsh recovered his physical strength, the conversations continued. He proved to be remarkably adaptable, learning basic Korvani language phrases and asking thoughtful questions about their culture and society. He spoke freely about his own background, describing his work as a field medic during what he called the final campaigns, and his role in establishing medical facilities in humanity's outer colonies. His story painted a picture of a dedicated medical professional who had spent years treating casualties in an increasingly desperate war. He described advanced surgical techniques, innovative trauma treatments, and mobile medical facilities that could operate in the most challenging environments. His knowledge of human physiology and medicine was encyclopedic, and he seemed genuinely interested in learning about Korvani medical practices as well. Dr. Voss found herself genuinely impressed by Dr. Walsh's professionalism and dedication. Despite the traumatic circumstances of his revival, he maintained a positive attitude and expressed gratitude for the care he had received. He volunteered to help with medical research, offering insights into human biology that could benefit the broader galactic medical community. His willingness to share his knowledge and integrate into Korvani society was remarkable given what he had lost. Commander Chen arranged for Dr. Walsh to have comfortable quarters near the medical facility, with access to the station's databases so he could learn about the current state of galactic civilization. She assigned Dr. Lisa Park, a cultural specialist, to help him adapt to life among the Korvani and understand the complex political landscape of the modern galaxy. Dr. Park was fascinated by the opportunity to work with a living human. Her field of study focused on extinct civilizations, and she had written extensively about human culture based on archaeological evidence and historical records. Having the chance to speak directly with someone who had lived through humanity's final era was beyond her wildest academic dreams. The conversations between Dr. Walsh and Dr. Park became a daily routine that both of them looked forward to. She would ask about human customs, art, literature, and social structures, while he inquired about the various species that now populated the galaxy and the political systems that governed interstellar relations. Their exchanges were recorded for historical purposes, creating an invaluable archive of human cultural knowledge. Dr. Walsh proved to be an engaging storyteller with a remarkable memory for detail. He described Earth's great cities, the orbital habitats that surrounded the planet, and the massive colony ships that had carried humans to distant worlds. He spoke of human music, literature, and art with obvious affection, and he was able to recite poetry and songs from memory that added emotional depth to the historical record. His descriptions of human medical practices were particularly valuable to Dr. Voss and her team. Dr. Walsh explained surgical techniques that were more advanced than current Korvani methods, described medications that could potentially be synthesized for modern use, and outlined treatment protocols for conditions that the Korvani had struggled to address. His knowledge represented centuries of human medical advancement that could benefit patients throughout the galaxy. As weeks passed, Dr. Walsh became a valued member of the research station community. He assisted in the medical bay, providing consultations on difficult cases and helping to develop new treatment approaches. His bedside manner with patients was exemplary, and his ability to remain calm under pressure made him an asset during medical emergencies. The other residents of Meridian Falls found Dr. Walsh to be friendly and approachable, despite the obvious cultural differences. He made an effort to learn about Korvani society and to participate in social activities when his duties permitted. His presence brought a unique perspective to discussions about ethics, philosophy, and the challenges of interspecies cooperation. Commander Chen received regular reports about Dr. Walsh's integration into station life, and all of them were positive. He had requested access to technical databases so he could better understand Korvani technology, and his questions revealed a sophisticated understanding of engineering principles. His interest in learning about their society appeared genuine, and his contributions to the medical research programs were already yielding valuable results. Dr. Walsh also spent considerable time in the station's archives, researching the history of human civilization and the events that had led to its collapse. He seemed particularly interested in the final years, asking specific questions about the locations of former human colonies and the details of the conflicts that had destroyed them. Dr. Park assisted with this research, helping him navigate the complex historical databases and providing context for the events he was studying. The picture that emerged from their research was troubling. Humanity's final century had been marked by increasingly destructive warfare, both between human factions and against external enemies. The records suggested that humans had developed weapons of unprecedented power, including biological agents that could devastate entire planets and nanotechnology that could consume any organic matter it encountered. The end had come swiftly. Within a span of just 30 years, every human colony had gone silent. Relief expeditions sent by other species had found dead worlds, empty space stations, and no survivors. Earth itself had been abandoned, its surface rendered uninhabitable by some form of environmental catastrophe that left the planet a barren wasteland. Dr. Walsh listened to these accounts with obvious grief, but also with a professional detachment that impressed those who worked with him. He asked technical questions about the weapons described in the historical records and seemed particularly interested in the biological agents that had apparently been used in the final conflicts. His medical expertise allowed him to understand the mechanisms of destruction in ways that pure historians could not. As the months passed, Dr. Walsh's role at the research station evolved from patient to colleague to trusted friend. He participated in staff meetings, contributed to research projects, and even helped train other medical personnel in advanced trauma treatment techniques. His presence had transformed from a historical curiosity into a valuable addition to the station's capabilities. Commander Chen found herself genuinely fond of the human doctor. His dedication to helping others, regardless of their species, embodied the best ideals of medical practice. His knowledge and experience had already saved lives and improved medical outcomes throughout the station. She began to consider offering him a permanent position on the research staff, knowing that his contributions would only become more valuable over time. Dr. Voss had developed what could only be described as a friendship with Dr. Walsh. Their shared dedication to medicine created a strong bond between them, despite the obvious species differences. She found his insights into human physiology fascinating, and his willingness to share knowledge had accelerated several important research projects. More than that, she genuinely enjoyed his company and looked forward to their daily conversations about medical techniques and patient care. The relationship between Dr. Walsh and Dr. Park had evolved into something approaching mentorship. She had learned more about human civilization in the past few months than years of archaeological study had revealed, and her publications based on their conversations were already being recognized as groundbreaking contributions to xenoarchaeology. Dr. Walsh seemed to enjoy sharing his knowledge about human culture, and he often spoke about the importance of preserving the memory of his people for future generations. Dr. Walsh had also formed friendships with many of the other station personnel. His quiet humor and genuine interest in others made him popular among the staff, and his medical expertise had helped many of them with personal health issues. Several of the younger researchers had begun studying human language and culture, inspired by their interactions with him. The integration had been so successful that it was easy to forget the extraordinary circumstances of Dr. Walsh's arrival. He had adapted to life among the Korvani with remarkable grace, embracing their customs while maintaining his own cultural identity. His presence had enriched the research station in ways that went far beyond his medical contributions. However, as Dr. Walsh settled into his new life, subtle changes began to appear that would eventually raise questions about his true nature and purpose. His interest in the station's technical system seemed to grow stronger each day, and his questions about Korvani society became increasingly detailed and specific. His research into human history focused heavily on military technology and strategic capabilities, topics that seemed somewhat removed from his stated interests in preserving cultural memory. Dr. Park began to notice that Dr. Walsh's recall of certain events seemed inconsistent. Details about his pre-preservation life sometimes changed between conversations, and his knowledge of human military operations was remarkably comprehensive for someone who claimed to have been purely a medical officer. When questioned about these inconsistencies, Dr. Walsh attributed them to the effects of long-term cryogenic preservation, explaining that some memories remained fuzzy while others were crystal clear. Dr. Voss observed that Dr. Walsh's sleep patterns were unusual for a human. He required less rest than historical records suggested was normal for his species, and his brain activity during sleep showed patterns that didn't match typical human neurological profiles. When she mentioned these observations, Dr. Walsh explained that he had undergone medical treatments during the final years of human civilization that had enhanced his physical capabilities and endurance. These minor anomalies were easily dismissed as the natural result of advanced human medical technology and the unique circumstances of his preservation and revival. Dr. Walsh's contributions to the station remained invaluable, and his integration into Korvani society continued to progress smoothly. The small inconsistencies seemed insignificant compared to the tremendous value of having a living human available for cultural and medical consultation. Commander Chen's reports to Korvani High Command were uniformly positive. Dr. Walsh represented a remarkable opportunity for scientific advancement and cultural understanding. His presence had already led to breakthrough medical discoveries and provided unprecedented insights into human civilization. She recommended that he be granted permanent resident status and offered a formal position within the Korvani research establishment. The recommendation was approved enthusiastically by the High Command, who saw Dr. Walsh as both a valuable asset and a powerful symbol of Korvani compassion and scientific achievement. Plans were made to present him to the Galactic Council as proof that the galaxy's lost civilizations could still contribute to the common good, even centuries after their apparent extinction. As preparations began for Dr. Walsh's introduction to the broader galactic community, few could have imagined that they were about to unleash something far more dangerous than a simple survivor from humanity's past. The truth about Dr. Thomas Walsh, and the real purpose behind his preservation, would soon test everything the Korvani believed about their new friend and the extinct civilization he represented. Security Chief Marcus Torres had been monitoring the research station systems for 15 years without encountering a single unexplained anomaly. That streak ended on a Tuesday morning when his diagnostic programs flagged irregularities in the medical database access logs. Someone had been querying patient files with surgical precision, extracting information about Korvani physiology, genetic markers, and biological vulnerabilities in patterns that suggested systematic intelligence gathering rather than legitimate medical research. Torres studied the access patterns with growing concern. The queries originated from Dr. Walsh's assigned terminal, but their scope extended far beyond what any medical consultation would require. The human doctor had accessed detailed anatomical charts, genetic sequencing data, and classified medical research files that contained sensitive information about Korvani biological defenses against various toxins and pathogens. The timing of the accesses was equally suspicious. They occurred during night shifts when the medical bay was minimally staffed, and the query patterns showed a methodical approach to data collection that reminded Torres of military intelligence operations. Dr. Walsh was systematically mapping the biological vulnerabilities of an entire species, and he was doing it with the skill of a trained operative. Torres brought his concerns to Dr. Rebecca Santos, the station's chief of internal security. Santos was a veteran investigator with experience in counterintelligence operations, and she immediately recognized the significance of Torres's findings. The data access patterns were textbook examples of biological reconnaissance, the kind of information gathering that preceded the development of species-specific biological weapons. "How long has this been going on?" Santos asked as she reviewed the access logs on her secure terminal. "The pattern started 3 weeks after Dr. Walsh's revival," Torres replied. "Initially, the queries seemed related to his medical research, but the scope has expanded dramatically over the past month. He's now accessing files that have nothing to do with his assigned projects." Santos felt a chill run down her spine as she contemplated the implications. If Dr. Walsh was indeed conducting biological intelligence gathering, it suggested that his presence at the research station was not the fortunate accident it appeared to be. The possibility that humanity's last survivor was actually an advanced scout for some unknown threat would revolutionize their understanding of both human extinction and current galactic security. "Have you discussed this with Dr. Voss or Commander Chen?" Santos asked. "Not yet," Torres admitted. "I wanted to verify my findings before making accusations against someone who's become so integral to the station's operations. Everyone respects Dr. Walsh, and questioning his motives without solid evidence could be career suicide." Santos understood his reluctance. Dr. Walsh had become something of a celebrity within the Korvani research community, and his contributions to medical science had earned him powerful allies throughout the government. Accusing him of espionage would require irrefutable proof, especially given the diplomatic ramifications of suggesting that humanity's last representative was actually a threat to galactic security. "Continue monitoring his activities," Santos instructed. "Document everything, but don't take any action that might alert him to our investigation. If Dr. Walsh is what we suspect he might be, we need to understand the full scope of his mission before we move against him." Meanwhile, Dr. Walsh was encountering unexpected complications in his own carefully orchestrated mission. The biological data he had collected was extensive, but his attempts to synthesize it into actionable intelligence were being hampered by gaps in his understanding of Korvani's social structures and military capabilities. His programming had prepared him for many scenarios, but the peaceful nature of Korvani society presented challenges that his creators had not anticipated. The research station's security measures were sophisticated, but designed to prevent external threats rather than internal sabotage. Dr. Walsh had been able to access sensitive databases with relative ease, but transmitting the information to his intended recipients required communication channels that would inevitably leave traces. His handlers had equipped him with advanced technology, but even the most sophisticated equipment had limitations when operating in an environment designed by a technologically advanced alien species. Dr. Walsh's enhanced physiology was also beginning to manifest in ways that were difficult to conceal. His reaction times were faster than normal human parameters, his strength exceeded what his apparent muscle mass should provide, and his sensory acuity was sharp enough to detect conversations and activities throughout the research station that should have been beyond human perception. These advantages were useful for intelligence gathering, but they also created risks of exposure that grew more dangerous with each passing day. The psychological conditioning that had prepared him for deep cover operations was similarly presenting unexpected challenges. Dr. Walsh found himself genuinely caring about the Korvani colleagues who had welcomed him so warmly, and their obvious affection for him created emotional conflicts that interfered with his mission parameters. His programming had anticipated the possibility of forming superficial relationships for operational purposes, but the depth of connection he felt with people like Dr. Voss and Dr. Park was something his creators had not prepared him to handle. Dr. Jennifer Kim, the station's chief psychologist, had been observing Dr. Walsh's behavior patterns as part of the standard psychological support provided to trauma survivors. Her training in human psychology was based on historical records and theoretical models, but working with an actual human had revealed discrepancies that troubled her professional instincts. Dr. Walsh's emotional responses were appropriate on the surface, but Kim detected subtle inconsistencies that suggested either severe psychological trauma or deliberate emotional control. His reactions to stressful situations were too measured, his social interactions too carefully calibrated, and his apparent adaptation to life among aliens too rapid for someone who had lost everything he had ever known. Kim shared her observations with Dr. Angela Rodriguez, a specialist in post-traumatic stress disorders, who had been consulted on Dr. Walsh's case. Rodriguez was equally concerned by the psychological profile that emerged from their discussions. Dr. Walsh showed none of the expected symptoms of grief, survivor guilt, or cultural displacement that should have been overwhelming for someone in his position. "It's as if he's following a script," Rodriguez explained during their confidential consultation. "His responses are textbook examples of healthy adaptation, but they're too perfect. Real trauma survivors show much more variability in their emotional states, especially when dealing with losses as profound as the extinction of their entire species." Kim nodded grimly. "I've tried various psychological assessment techniques, but his responses consistently suggest either remarkable emotional resilience or sophisticated training in psychological manipulation. Given the circumstances of his discovery, I'm beginning to suspect the latter." The two psychologists agreed to intensify their observation of Dr. Walsh while maintaining the appearance of routine psychological support. They developed subtle tests designed to probe his emotional authenticity and psychological conditioning, carefully documenting any responses that deviated from expected human norms. Meanwhile, Dr. Park was discovering her own reasons for concern about Dr. Walsh's background. Her extensive research into human civilization had made her one of the galaxy's foremost experts on human culture and history, and she had begun to notice inconsistencies in Dr. Walsh's accounts that troubled her scholarly instincts. Dr. Walsh's knowledge of human history was remarkably comprehensive, but it was skewed toward military operations and technological capabilities in ways that seemed inconsistent with his claimed background as a medical officer. His descriptions of medical facilities often included detailed information about their defensive capabilities, supply chains, and strategic importance that seemed beyond the scope of a doctor's normal concerns. More troubling were the gaps in his cultural knowledge. Dr. Walsh could describe human military equipment in exhaustive detail, but his understanding of human art, literature, and social customs was surprisingly superficial for someone who claimed to have lived through humanity's golden age. His recollections focused heavily on conflict and survival, with little mention of the creative achievements that had made human civilization remarkable. Dr. Park began cross-referencing Dr. Walsh's accounts with historical records, looking for verification of the events and locations he described. What she found was deeply disturbing. Many of the military operations he claimed to have participated in had never been documented in any historical archive, and some of the medical facilities he described were located on worlds that had been uninhabitable during the time period he claimed to have served there. The discrepancies were subtle enough that they might have been attributed to memory gaps caused by cryogenic preservation, but the pattern suggested deliberate misinformation rather than simple forgetfulness. Dr. Walsh appeared to be providing false information about his past, while simultaneously gathering detailed intelligence about Korvani society and capabilities. Dr. Park's growing suspicions were shared by Chief Engineer Robert Nakamura, who had been working with Dr. Walsh on several technical projects. Nakamura was impressed by the human's understanding of engineering principles, but concerned by his focus on systems that had military or security applications. Dr. Walsh had requested detailed information about the research station's power distribution networks, environmental control systems, and communication arrays. claiming that understanding these systems would help him contribute more effectively to maintenance operations. However, his questions consistently focused on potential vulnerabilities, backup systems, and emergency protocols that seemed more relevant to sabotage than to routine maintenance. Nakamura had initially attributed Dr. Walsh's technical curiosity to the natural interests of someone trained in complex medical equipment, but the pattern of inquiries was beginning to suggest a more sinister purpose. The human was systematically mapping the station's critical infrastructure with the thoroughness of someone planning to disable it. The engineer's concerns deepened when he discovered that Dr. Walsh had been accessing technical databases during off-duty hours, downloading schematics and operational manuals for systems that were completely unrelated to his medical responsibilities. The access was technically authorized, as Dr. Walsh had been granted research privileges, but the scope and focus of his activities were clearly outside the bounds of legitimate medical research. Nakamura brought his concerns to Assistant Director Maria Gonzalez, who oversaw the research station's technical operations. Gonzalez was a seasoned administrator with experience in both civilian research and military security, and she immediately recognized the implications of Nakamura's report. "How much sensitive technical information has he accessed?" Gonzalez asked, as she reviewed the download logs on her secure terminal. "Enough to understand every critical system on the station," Nakamura replied grimly. "He's downloaded maintenance manuals, emergency procedures, and security protocols for everything from life support to weapon systems. If he wanted to disable our operations, he now has the knowledge to do it effectively." Gonzalez felt a growing sense of urgency as she considered the security implications. If Dr. Walsh was indeed an enemy operative, his access to sensitive technical information could compromise not only the research station, but also the broader Korvani research network. The damage he could cause with his current level of access was potentially catastrophic. The various investigations into Dr. Walsh's activities remained compartmentalized, with each department pursuing its own concerns without full awareness of the other's findings. This changed when Dr. Santos detected an unauthorized communication transmission originating from Dr. Walsh's quarters during the night shift. The transmission was brief and heavily encrypted, but its very existence violated station security protocols and suggested that Dr. Walsh was maintaining contact with external parties without authorization. Santos immediately expanded her investigation, coordinating with Torres, Kim, Rodriguez, Park, Nakamura, and Gonzalez to compare their findings and develop a comprehensive understanding of the threat they were facing. The evidence, when compiled together, painted a disturbing picture. Dr. Walsh was systematically gathering biological, technical, and strategic intelligence about Korvani capabilities while maintaining covert communications with unknown recipients. His background story contained significant inconsistencies. His psychological profile suggested sophisticated conditioning, and his behavior patterns were consistent with those of a trained operative rather than a medical professional. Santos convened an emergency meeting of the investigation team to discuss their findings and develop a response strategy. The meeting took place in a secure conference room that was shielded against electronic surveillance, ensuring that their discussion could not be monitored by Dr. Walsh or any accomplices he might have within the station. "The evidence is overwhelming," Santos began as she presented the compiled intelligence to the assembled group. "Dr. Thomas Walsh is not the innocent survivor he appears to be. His activities on this station constitute a comprehensive intelligence operation targeting Korvani society, technology, and biological vulnerabilities." Dr. Park nodded grimly. "His knowledge of human history is too selective and too focused on military applications. A real medical officer from humanity's final era would have broader cultural knowledge and different priorities." Dr. Kim added her psychological assessment. "His emotional responses are consistent with advanced conditioning designed to enable long-term deception. He's been trained to maintain a false identity under extended scrutiny." Nakamura provided the technical perspective. "He's mapped our entire infrastructure and downloaded enough information to disable the station if he chooses to do so. His access to sensitive systems represents a clear and present danger to our operations." Torres presented the communications evidence. "He's been transmitting intelligence to unknown recipients using equipment that's far more advanced than anything in our historical records of human technology. This suggests that his mission is part of a larger operation with significant technological support." The implications were staggering. If Dr. Walsh was indeed an operative from some surviving human faction, his presence at the research station represented the opening move in what could be a galaxy-wide infiltration campaign. The possibility that humanity had not actually gone extinct, but had instead gone into hiding while preparing for some form of return, would fundamentally alter the galactic political landscape. Santos outlined the immediate security concerns. We need to determine whether Walsh is acting alone or if he has accomplices within the station. We also need to identify his communication recipients and understand the full scope of his mission before we take action against him. Gonzalez raised the diplomatic implications. If we're wrong about this and Dr. Walsh is genuinely innocent, accusing him of espionage could destroy our relationship with other species who see him as a symbol of Korvani compassion. The political ramifications could be enormous. The team agreed to intensify their surveillance while maintaining operational security. They would continue their investigation covertly, gathering additional evidence while preparing for the possibility that Dr. Walsh might discover their activities and take hostile action. The situation required careful handling to prevent a potential security disaster from becoming a diplomatic catastrophe. Dr. Walsh, meanwhile, was becoming increasingly aware that his activities were drawing attention. His enhanced senses allowed him to detect subtle changes in the behavior of station personnel, and his training in counter-surveillance techniques made him sensitive to the signs of an ongoing investigation. The casual conversations and routine interactions that had characterized his early months at the station were being replaced by more careful, guarded exchanges that suggested suspicion. The realization that his cover might be compromised triggered protocols that his handlers had embedded in his psychological conditioning. Dr. Walsh began preparing contingency plans for rapid extraction, or, if necessary, the elimination of potential threats to his mission. His enhanced physiology and combat training made him capable of neutralizing multiple opponents. But engaging in violence would expose his true nature and potentially compromise other operations that might be running elsewhere in the galaxy. The situation reached a critical point when Dr. Walsh detected electronic surveillance equipment that had been placed in his quarters without his knowledge. The devices were sophisticated but not beyond his ability to detect, and their presence confirmed that his activities were under active investigation. His conditioning protocols indicated that immediate action was required to preserve operational security. Dr. Walsh's first priority was to complete the transmission of his gathered intelligence to his handlers before the investigation could prevent him from doing so. He had compiled comprehensive data on Korvani biological vulnerabilities, technical capabilities, and social structures that would be invaluable for future operations. The information needed to be transmitted immediately, even if doing so exposed his position and ended his mission. Using equipment that he had kept hidden in his quarters, Dr. Walsh began preparing for a high-priority data transmission that would send his complete intelligence package to predetermined coordinates in deep space. The transmission would take several hours to complete and would be impossible to conceal from the station's monitoring systems, but it would ensure that his mission objectives were achieved regardless of what happened to him personally. As Dr. Walsh initiated the transmission sequence, alarms began sounding throughout the research station. The communications array detected the unauthorized signal immediately, and security protocols activated automatically to prevent potential breaches. Emergency lighting bathed the corridors in red as security teams mobilized to locate and neutralize the source of the transmission. Dr. Santos received the alert at her command center and immediately recognized that their investigation had transitioned from intelligence gathering to active crisis management. Dr. Walsh had revealed his true nature by attempting to transmit classified information, and the situation now required immediate containment to prevent him from causing additional damage to station security. All units converge on Dr. Walsh's quarters, Santos commanded through the emergency communication system. Suspect is considered extremely dangerous and should be approached with maximum caution. Do not attempt to apprehend without backup. Security teams throughout the station began moving toward Dr. Walsh's location, but they were hampered by their unfamiliarity with the true nature of the threat they were facing. They expected to confront a human medical officer who had been conducting unauthorized research, not an enhanced operative with combat capabilities that exceeded normal human parameters. Dr. Walsh monitored the security response through his enhanced hearing and tactical awareness systems. The approaching teams were well-trained but unprepared for the kind of resistance he could provide if necessary. His priority remained the completion of his data transmission, but he was prepared to defend himself if the security forces attempted to interrupt the process. The confrontation began when the first security team reached Dr. Walsh's quarters and found the door sealed against intrusion. The team leader, Sergeant David Park, attempted to override the locking mechanism using standard security codes, but the door remained sealed. Unknown to the security forces, Dr. Walsh had modified the locking system using his advanced technical knowledge, creating a barrier that would require significant time and effort to breach. "Dr. Walsh," Sergeant Park called through the sealed door, "please open the door and surrender peacefully. We need to discuss some irregularities in your research activities." Dr. Walsh's response was calm and measured, revealing nothing of the tension he felt as his transmission continued uploading critical intelligence data. "I'm afraid I can't do that, Sergeant. I have important work to complete, and I cannot allow it to be interrupted." The response confirmed Santos's worst fears. Dr. Walsh was not behaving like an innocent researcher who had accidentally violated security protocols. His tone and manner suggested someone who was prepared for confrontation and determined to complete a mission regardless of the consequences. Santos arrived at Dr. Walsh's quarters with additional security personnel and specialized equipment designed to breach reinforced barriers. The situation had escalated beyond a simple security violation and now represented a potential threat to the entire research station. The unauthorized transmission had to be stopped before classified information could be compromised. "Dr. Walsh," Santos called through the door. "I'm Chief Santos from Internal Security. You're conducting an unauthorized transmission that violates station security protocols. Please terminate the transmission and open the door so we can resolve this situation peacefully." Dr. Walsh's response revealed the first hint of his true identity and purpose. "Chief Santos, I appreciate your position, but I'm afraid my obligations extend beyond station security protocols. I have responsibilities that supersede local regulations, and I must fulfill them regardless of the personal consequences."